Greetings and welcome to the ROI Clear podcast. My name is Ray Hightower, and today we are fortunate to have as our guest Mr. Eric Carr. Eric Carr, there's so many things I could say about him. He's a Bitcoin and blockchain enthusiast. He's a real estate investor. He's a martial arts instructor, an instructor in Jeet Kune Do, which he learned from his mentor, Sifu Jerry Poteet, one of Bruce Lee's original elite students. And this lineage encourages or ensures that Carr teaches the authentic combat-centric form of Jeet Kune Do as envisioned by Bruce Lee himself. So we're going to talk about martial arts. We're going to talk about blockchain and Bitcoin. We're going to talk about real estate. We're going to talk about dogs because this man, Eric Carr, has eclectic interests. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our guest, Mr. Eric Carr. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you.
Glad to have you here, man. So glad to have you here.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yes. So to kick things off, there's so many directions that we could go in with this. Why don't we talk about Bitcoin? And I got to give our guests a little bit of background. You and I were on a boat off the coast of Florida. We were at dinner with some people. There were about 4 of us at the dinner table there, and someone asked one question about blockchain, and you peppered us with blockchain knowledge all through the rest of the evening. And to some people, some would say, oh, wow, just one subject, but your knowledge of blockchain and Bitcoin is so deep, and it is so, your view of it is so passionate. So it was a pleasure to hear you talk about that. I'm going to kick this off with one question about blockchain, and then we're going to talk about some other things. But let me ask you this. What is something that most people misunderstand? What is something that most people misunderstand about Bitcoin and blockchain technology?
Good question. So one of the big things I hear is that people say, well, I can't touch it, so it's not real. And I get it, but I point out that your photos on your iPhone or your Android, you can't really touch those either. Even bigger than that, electricity. Electricity is real. One of the most important inventions of the last few hundred years, but you can't hold electricity. The only reason that we're here, is because of electricity. The microchip and the rise of all those devices, because of electricity. So that's the one thing that people don't necessarily, they don't get, that it's because they say tangible or intrinsic. And a lot of them don't understand what that word means. They can't, repeat the definition. But that's one of the biggest things that the mental blocks I run into with people is that because they can't touch it, they don't think it's real.
Yes, because they can't touch it, they don't think it's real. So what are some things that people will enjoy as benefits of Bitcoin or blockchain? And I'm making a distinction between the two. Should I be making that distinction? I'm thinking blockchain has other uses besides Bitcoin. There's Ethereum, but
yeah. So those are different blockchains. So the way that you look at their blockchain is a technology that is, but the Bitcoin and the blockchain are inseparable. You've heard Jamie Dimon say, yeah, blockchain, yeah, but Bitcoin, no. And I think even Larry Fink said that for a while. But, they've got the most successful ETF in Wall Street history is their Bitcoin spot ETF. So, yeah, the most financial.
Larry Fink's most successful ETF is their blockchain.
Across the board, not just for BlackRock, but the most successful financial product in Wall Street history is the Bitcoin spot ETF. It broke all records. Opening day, largest inflows. It did in two months what gold did in 2 years.
Yes.
Yeah. So there was a lot of demand, pent up demand for it. But the regulatory hurdles and that for corporations and that, it was just expensive and time consuming. Like MicroStrategy did it. It took them months and months. Yeah. So blockchain and Bitcoin, they're the same. You can't separate the two there. But when you're talking about a blockchain technology, that's where it gets a little into the weeds. Ethereum is a different type of blockchain. Now, some of those other tokens I've made money on the way up. The only thing that I want to hold for the next 5 or 10 years is Bitcoin. The other stuff, think of it like venture capital. If you put your money into 10 things, if one takes off, you make your money. I don't want to make that bet. I can't choose the winners. So I just went with I wanted the monopoly. Bitcoin. It's decentralized. No one can change it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now, what is it that, what would you say to someone who is concerned that, I mean, certainly with blockchain, the technology can be used for other things other than as a store of value, other than for money. For example, it can be used to record real estate titles. You and I are in the real estate business, to record titles in a way that you don't have to record titles on paper, or they did paper, then they did microfilm, and now we're doing this on, we're using digital technology, using computers. But with blockchain, if we record titles on blockchain, if there's a change made anywhere in the chain, that change is propagated throughout the chain, so you can prevent fraud that way, or at least make fraud very apparent. So there are uses of blockchain. There are those who believe, though, that Bitcoin itself may be more like the tulip bulb mania way back in, I think it was the 1600s. There was tulip bulbs. You remember, about the tulip bulbs.
I heard the argument, yeah.
Described in that book, Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds by McKay. So I'm wondering, what is it about Bitcoin that makes it different from the tulip bulbs back, hundreds of years ago?
I'm glad you asked. So, the tulip bulb, I think, when that last 5 years, you know what I mean?
Yes.
We're going on, 15, 16. And, and people had said, well, it's a bubble. Well, look, I've never seen a bubble that busted and then went on to go on higher than its previous all-time high. Every time it's a bubble and it crashes, it goes on higher. I started buying when it was $246. And I remember people reading posts online from before that. People never thought it would go to $1, and then $10, and then $100, and then it was $1,000. It'll never go to $1,000, and of course it has. And now some of the biggest, like I just said, most successful financial product in Wall Street history, Bitcoin ETF, and they're launching all over the world. Countries are adopting it, not just El Salvador. There's a couple of other smaller countries that have adopted it, and Wisconsin just bought it and put it on their balance sheet. So
the state of Wisconsin owns Bitcoin now.
The state of Wisconsin now owns Bitcoin. Yeah, the U.S. government holds Bitcoin, but it was from a confiscated stash that they're holding. It's worth billions. But yeah, but you look at the difference between the tulips. Tulips really, they look pretty, and that's about it. But Bitcoin, you're storing your wealth, for generations. This is buying a piece of the internet. If you could have bought the base layer piece of the internet, that's what Bitcoin is. If you could buy a share of electricity, that's what I look at. This is what Bitcoin is. I think when someone, whoever, when electricity was first channeled, and there was somebody back in the 600 BC that rubbed some stuff together and got a charge and electric. But when electricity was first channeled, and A, you can't hold it, but B, I very much doubt anyone imagined the microchip, and that we'd be talking to each other across states over invisible waves, on places that aren't plugged into anything. Yes. They could have imagined that. So the same thing with Bitcoin. William Shakespeare said what's past is prologue, and I look at history. Humans don't change. They threw eggs at the car, can't pull us through the mud. They're afraid of flying. They're afraid of the electric elevator. Why do I need an electric freezer when I get ice delivered every day? Henry Ford said, if I ask people what they want, they'd say faster horses. So there's a lot, and you nailed it, I think, with titles. That's a big one. Property titles on the Bitcoin blockchain. It's public, it's anonymous, but if you want to search for, like, technology is deflationary. This dematerialized Kodak and the camera and the film and that whole chain, right?
Sure.
So technology has dropped the price of everything, and made our lives easier, and things with efficiency, that offer efficiency in that, they win. They typically win. So we're going to see escrow. You can have a whole escrow on the blockchain, just smart contracts, no people involved, no wiring money. No going to the bank, no fax machines, none of that. You're going to have, an entire real estate transaction done on the blockchain. And when certain things were done, are certain, responsibilities from each party are satisfied, then the monies will get released. And the protocol does what it's supposed to do. There's no fraud there. It's like Anderson, if, back in that whole implosion, if their books were on the blockchain, they couldn't have cooked them. But also, when they went under, there was a big question of who owns what assets. There's no question there.
Mm.
Tokenization, what you do, you could run your system on the Bitcoin side chain. It'll trade 24 hours a day, instant settlement, and there's no question on who owns what amount of asset. There's no recording, no paper, none of that stuff. So that's gonna efficiency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all that we're streamlining everything, and that will all be done with, and that's just a little bit of what's coming down the pipe. There's people out there doing really cool stuff that I couldn't even imagine. That's just the way, innovation, and that's the way it goes.
It sounds like, from listening to you, it sounds like we're still in early days when it comes to Bitcoin. It's
Yeah.
like the toy stage, like before the Wright brothers were able to fly, and then eventually we got spaceships now going to the moon and what have you. But before that, for hundreds of years, thousands of years, we had toy aircraft. Paper airplanes have been around for thousands of years. These were toys.
Mhm.
And we may still be in the toy stage of Bitcoin, but 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, we will be much further along, more towards the way we are with flight right now. So that's exciting.
Agree.
That future is exciting. I
I
like
agree.
the question you asked about ice. Why do I need a freezer when I get ice delivered every day?
People said that. That was a story I had read about a GE focus group. They brought people in, they introduced the new electric freezer, and they were like, why do I need that? Come on,
Yes.
there's something called Moore's law, where whatever technology leap from A to B, the B to C is half as much as it took, to get to A to B. So,
Yes.
however many 100 years it took for the microchip to come along, since electricity was, flowing through copper wires, the next step in Bitcoin, it's going to be much sooner. There's a
Right.
lot of stuff coming down. I pay attention to projects and innovation. There's a lot of stuff coming. I mean, Exxon, for one, they're flaring their stranded gas, from it's a byproduct of oil refining. They used to just flare it, burn it out in the atmosphere. Well, now they're burning it and they're mining Bitcoin with it. There's a company, there's a guy I listened to on a podcast, environmental company, but the way he was going was too slow and too low return. It was just slow moving. Well, what he's doing now is he's going to capture methane gas from landfills, and he's going to burn that for energy to mine Bitcoin. Now, the over a 20-year period, that methane gas is 80% more harmful than CO2s. So you burn methane, you're going to get CO2. It's a byproduct, and it's not good, but you're reducing the harmfulness of that methane coming off that landfill by 80% over the next 20 years. So these types of things, Jay Leno said something in the 90s, man. I was a kid, but I remember he said engineering will save the world. I didn't know, what the implications of that, but it stuck with me. And we're seeing, yeah, so there's a lot of smart people working on things for uses of this technology, just like the internet. When the internet came out, it was GeoCities websites and Prodigy, remember multimedia clips where 30
Yes.
to 3 minutes. Now we're watching movies over the internet. The record store I worked at when I was a teenager in the mid-90s is gone. The creative destruction again, and the deflation, because I can watch anything I want, I can listen to anything I want in an instant on my phone.
Right.
I don't have to go anywhere to, do it the old way.
Bottom line, it makes sense to have vision and don't assume that things will always be as they are.
Normalcy
Have
bias.
vision. Yes, yes. Right, right.
We
There
all,
we
we all
go.
suffer from, yeah, we all normalcy bias. Yeah. Did you have a quiet, I didn't want to cut you off. Did you have a,
No. Go ahead. Your show, man.
I can keep talking. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I look at, people's emotions, what's past is prologue. That was a big one that stood out for me. And, you look at people getting emotional, they like to, for me, it was like, okay, when I started buying real estate in 2011, even before that, just before that, I was a kid, I just got my first professional career job, and I'm looking at houses. I'm like, wow, how does anyone afford this? I'm just a single guy, and, rental property made sense to me. What, dude, you pay this, the bank gives you the money and you get all the benefits, the tax, and, you need to write everything off, and the tenants pay off the thing, and you get what's left in your pocket. That's the way to do it. And then I started looking at, as time went on, I bought a few properties, but as time went on, 2018, I started looking at the Fed, and just the way that the system really works, all the strings that are being pulled, interest rates. And I just started thinking like, there's a lot more things than real estate. I started looking at stocks and mutual funds and index funds. Okay, the mutual funds didn't make sense to me because of the trading inside and the tax implications and that. And, index fund, Vanguard, great, but it takes too long. I didn't want to wait. So, reading books, like Rich Dad Poor Dad and things, you realize
Yes.
two ways to get rich. You have a business or you invest in something with asymmetric upside. Now, your business is real estate. And I think for me, the slow way I realized buying real estate was like the slow way to build wealth. 30 years, everything would be paid off and I can enjoy it. I don't want to wait. It's your business. So you're making money today, and it's a different thing. I think, having money going into real estate is a much better way to do it. So anyway, I started looking at, one of the rules of investing, leave emotion out of it. Same thing when
Sure.
you do Bitcoin. There's a lot of people that's emotional. I'm an investor, not a gambler. And I've heard it all over. Yeah. And dude, you're missing out. It was a big thing on Bigger Pockets where like someone, was like Bitcoin's back at 10,000 now. What, and all the trolls came out in this, and I'd casually go in and post all the developments. And of course, we're at what 61,000 today. It is volatile. We just hit a new all-time high of just short of 74 recently. But if you zoom out, it looks like this. The chart strips the fastest appreciating asset in human history. And there's a reason. So not being emotional allowed me to look at it. What is this? It's a technological breakthrough. Yeah. It's sound money. Yes. It's also the scarcest asset we've ever seen. If gold went to 70,000 tomorrow, miners will go dig more up out of the ground and dump it on the market. Gold's it's a manipulated market anyway. Chase Bank was just fined a couple of years ago for manipulating metals prices. Yeah, so and I look at it as an invention. It does a lot of what gold does, but it solves a lot of the defects. Just
Transferability is certainly one defect.
big one. Oh, big one.
Yes.
Storage is
Yes.
another. When you're gonna have somebody with a shotgun in front of a warehouse store, somebody just transferred and this is not the first time they did it. It was $1 billion of Bitcoin cross country lines. Whatever it took, 5 to 10 minutes, and it cost you dollars. You cannot do that with gold. It's going to cost you a lot. So it solves a lot of the defects, and we are a digital world, just like that record store I talked about. Music's all digital, they're gone. I've never known records are great. I love records. I love the way they sound, they feel, but it's a niche specialty interest these days. Nobody's buying CDs. They buy, vinyl for that, the interest, but
The nostalgia and the pops and the static.
I
Yeah,
love it. I love the way it sounds, the way it feels, it smells, but not about buying records, and just like when you're driving around, CDs and tapes were great because you could put it in your car. You can't carry a record collection and play it in your car. So, path of technology again. So I look at things without being emotional. What is this? Where, and it just hit me in the face. Like this is something that could be on the level of, as far as finance goes, a big game changer like electricity was for the world, like the internet was for the world. Yeah, the biggest companies in the world now live on the internet. Who could have imagined that back, 1995? Some people might have, but yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting. The evolution is exciting. Now let's compare and contrast what you've seen in the Bitcoin world and the blockchain world, and compare and contrast that with what you know about real estate and what you've done in the real estate market. You and I met in the real estate industry, out and about, right? Running around doing real estate deals, right?
Yeah.
What is it that you still find attractive about real estate, or what is it that you find unattractive about real estate now that you're also investing in Bitcoin?
Glad you asked. So I like real estate because, look, for me, it's something that the light came on, I got it, I understood it. And so far I've been pretty good at it. I've bought and sold, properties that I've made, anywhere from 80% gains to 100%. And it's just not, probably luck, You know what I mean? But it's one of those things that technology is not going to replace,
Yeah.
until we're in the matrix and nobody needs to do anything anymore, who knows what the future is going to look like, but it's one of those things like, land, they're not making Mark Twain, right? Bison, they're not making anymore,
Yes.
with Mark Twain. So, it's something I know, I understand, I love. I love providing homes for people. I like going into a neighborhood and taking something, especially value added and bringing it back to life. I don't like waste. I don't like
Mm,
sprawl. You know what I mean? And I think I look at it like I've got a responsibility to create a home for somebody. Um,
right.
but the tax benefits, the cash flow. I mean, come on, the bank, I don't, I'm moving away from bank money. And this is one of the reasons I got Bitcoin. So
Mm,
I jump back in, I'm gonna finance it myself. I don't want to pay anyone back. I don't want to pay a bank back, and especially rates. So, with interest rates the way they are. So what I like about real estate is it's necessary. I know, love, and I understand it's necessary, and it comes with a whole bunch of benefits of owning it, on the tax side, the cash flow. And I don't see it being replaced by technology, it's not, so that's why I love real estate. What I don't like about it is more to do with the Fed and the manipulation, there's no free market
mm.
anymore. It's all manipulated. The stock market is trading at its highest earnings, price to earnings ratio ever. And I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know, and when has the world never been in a weird place? But I look at the debt. I was at a conference in Novato, California, just north of San Francisco, with a couple of guys, Tim Parsa, Naval Ravikant, and Niraj
Mm.
Mehta. So these guys are billionaires and multimillionaire investors. And we talked about Bruce Lee. They all Bruce Lee fans.
Yes.
They're all long Bitcoin and real estate.
Wow.
The debt, there's no hope. That for their opinion, and I don't know how this is gonna, it's massive. The whole world's in debt. And it's just part of why I like Bitcoin. I'm watching this whole fiat system apparently melt down, and then some people will scoff. At the park where I take my dogs, a couple of guys know that, what I'm into, and hey, every time I see, the price of Bitcoin up, or I saw it on CNBC, I think of you. I'm like, oh. So they ask me questions and we talk. And there was a guy, nice guy. They're from Europe. He's from Hungary. Nice guy, good dog. Him and one of my dogs play well together. But he was listening in and he's like, oh, you don't have to worry about the interest rates. They've been coming down for centuries. I'm like, well, yeah, they have, but exactly. Here's what he said. You can't argue with me. I have a PhD from Harvard. So that I looked at him dead in the eye, and nice guy, and this was a thing for me. I'm like, okay, PhDs, what am I stepping into? But I've gone against MBAs before, and I see
Yes.
indoctrination, and they came out the textbook, and I demolished him nicely. But
Mm.
I explained my point. I gave him facts, and he was deer in the headlights, and he said, "Okay, well," and then he kind of walked away. That's how it ended.
Oh,
I'd like to pick this up with him again and just friendly conversation. I don't want to,
yes, right.
but he came at me. You can't argue with me. I have a PhD from Harvard, and that I'm a fighter, so I
Right.
took it,
Yes.
yeah. And he said,
Yes.
"You don't worry about the facts." And I looked at him. The guys that I was talking to looked at him, and
Don't worry about the facts.
that's what he said. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's just like that Jared Bernstein guy, lovely guy, I'm sure. Biden's head, economic advisor, couldn't explain how MMT, which is Keynesian, which is like how, dude, these guys evil. Keynesian economics. We're just gonna kick this can down the road and leave your kids and the next generation with a whole big mess. So I don't get into the weeds, but it was just, he couldn't explain how, how the U.S. sells bonds to borrow money. He couldn't explain it. Well, they do sell bonds. Is that what they do? And he just tripped over himself, and it looked like he almost came clean. He's like, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know how they're going to do this. And then he went, I thought he was going to come clean. It's like, yeah, this isn't going to work. Just like Jerome Powell came out recently and said, the U.S. is on an unsustainable fiscal path. He said that on it was a 60 Minutes, I believe. And we all know this, the Fed's job is to lie. We saw Bernanke do this in 2006 and 7. Oh, what real estate bubble? Oh, Freddie and Fannie are well capitalized. Oh, this is contained in the mortgage industry. And then it was, we're on the verge of a major systemic financial collapse, and I listened to that timeline. So,
It sounds like you're taking steps to protect yourself financially, regardless of which way the waves flow.
Satoshi Nakamoto, and I don't believe he was one person. This thing is too well thought out and
Mm,
well planned. I think it was probably a group of people. He said in the white paper, you might want to pick some up in case it catches on. And, civilizations throughout history have looked for sound money. And this is one of the big features of Bitcoin. It's sound money. You can't change it. There's no monetary policy where you can inflate. 80% of the currency in circulation right now was printed in the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah, we're going to have inflation. The Fed told us, oh, we won't have inflation. Then it was transitory. Then it was, well, it's not transitory, but we're looking for a soft landing. It's all manipulation, and this is why, for me, they haven't ruined it for real estate. I don't want to say that, but for me right now, I'm sort of sitting back and waiting and watching, which I absolutely hate because I want to be out there taking down deals. Congratulations on that Tucson property that you just picked
oh,
up.
thank you.
You
Yeah,
know,
thanks.
but I'm looking at it, big deal. Look, I sold $2 million worth of property in 21 and 22. One was in Austin, and I don't know anything, but it just felt like, I watched the property in Austin heat up, but also, they've got property tax, the 2.6% interest rate that they charge you, right, for property tax, but they also reassess every year because they don't have state income tax. Doesn't benefit me, but so they get the property tax. As you know, they get it one way or another.
Yes.
So
Oh, yeah.
they reassess the property. And I watch my cash flow getting squished. And, in the middle of a pandemic, I can't raise rent on these people. They could say we're not paying or just leave. And then I got, for me, that risk was just keep rents the same and just wait and watch. Well, I sold. After I sold, property values in Austin have been coming down. I'm in touch with brokers there, and I get their some things. 24% is the last number I heard. Oracle, which moved in there 4 years ago, is now moving to Nashville. Tesla, they just laid off 10,000 people out there. So I studied with a Taoist master from Beijing, right? I spent some time way back, but
This is Jeet Kune Do or
no,
economics?
Taoism, just straight up Taoism. He's a
Oh, yes.
lineage
Okay.
holder in a monastery. I learned Qigong and Tai Chi and Feng Shui and massage and just all the stuff they teach there, right? Martial arts. And he told me once, he said, when things become extreme, they flip and become their opposite. And he gave me all sorts of examples in nature. And the economy is no different. There are laws that have to be followed. It's like the current system. We've got two laws, think forces at play. The government wants a certain amount of inflation. They need it. They need it partly to inflate away the debt. And one of the things I like about Bitcoin is they can't touch it. What was the 1601?
That's what they hate about it.
That's right. They want control. They want control. And I'm turning into one of those tinfoil hat people where I'm like, looking at what's happening, what's 1601 where they outlawed gold back in the 30s, then they took it, they gave them something, then they repriced it, sold it back.
And they took all the gold back. It was illegal for private people to own gold. Yes, yes.
And then they repriced it and sold it back to everybody. That was one of the ways of getting out of the depression. Well, in 2008, we had quantitative easing. People don't realize how much they're getting taxed, which is why I like real estate, but also Bitcoin, because inflation is one of the most hideous taxes of all. And this is why countries are dumping the dollar. BRICS is growing. Thailand and Malaysia just applied to BRICS. Saudi's dealing outside of the US dollar right now. They're selling oil outside. All currencies are garbage. Fiat currencies are garbage. Voltaire said it. They all turn to their intrinsic value of zero. The US dollar still happens to be the best pile on the mound, but best thing on the pile, but this is what's happening. I'm looking at stuff and I'm in disbelief. The Japanese yen's collapsing. They said they were selling US bonds for dollars to buy back their yen as artificial demand to keep the value up. It's just like the US government borrowing from the Fed. You're the same entity, but you have to pay yourself back, but you have to, because if the US doesn't pay its debt back to its own Fed, the world's going to see that, like, the US doesn't pay their debt. They're going to dump all their bonds, all their US debt. I just look at this thing and it sounds crazy. And I'm not expecting, like, I don't know what's going to happen. I know there's headlines out there about a crisis and crash. I don't know, but I'm looking at this stuff and I'm just, how is this going to continue? The US told Japan, don't sell your bonds. We're going to print money and give you money. And I look at a lot of these things, and it sounds crazy. A lot of people out there that don't like Bitcoin, they're still emotional about it. Bitcoin fixes a lot of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's, you know what? I need to ask you this. This is normally a question I ask towards the end, but this is a good time to ask this question. For those who want to know about what you've studied about economics and Bitcoin and how they tie together and what's going on with the Fed, what would you recommend to our listeners and viewers as reading material or listening material, podcasts or books? What would you recommend?
So, I mean, you could start with the Bitcoin white paper. It's
Yes,
long, it's boring, but if you really want to
by
look at
Satoshi
it,
Nakamoto. Yes.
that's right.
Who
Yeah.
might be more than one person, as you said earlier, but
I think
yes.
so. If I'm looking at it,
Yes.
like there's no way one person thought of this, and the best thing they
Hmm.
did is they released it and they walked away. And the protocol is just going to do what it does. You see all sorts of politicians, they've got scandal, you've got scandal in businesses, Arthur Anderson, this and that, but the Bitcoin protocol just keeps doing what it does. It
Mm.
doesn't change its mind depending on what incentivizes it or how it feels that day. It does what it does. Therefore, it's trustworthy in that way, and it's distributed.
Yeah.
So you've got, as it grows and more countries participate, you've got an incentive to uphold that integrity, because if you've got $1 trillion worth of value on the Bitcoin blockchain, on the network, you don't want to corrupt it. So you're going to uphold there. So all of these nodes across the world are participating in maintaining that ledger. Money's a
Mm.
ledger. So
Sure.
it's becoming, and the fact that we've had, presidential candidates, Trump now has come around. He's going to a Bitcoin conference. He's told everyone, all the Bitcoin holders, which is a fifth of the U.S. population. Bitcoin is global, but just in the US, 1/5 of the US population and growing are Bitcoin holders. Trump came out and said he's going to protect everyone's right to custody and hold their Bitcoin. Wisconsin bought. Wyoming is a big Bitcoin state. Montana. These states are, and Texas is the Bitcoin mining hub of the US. You've got these, Miami, Florida is another big Bitcoin city. But they see the value, but also you've got, you've got these participants that, so presidential election, by the way, Vivek, he was a Bitcoiner.
Mhm.
Kennedy, RFK, big Bitcoiner. He said, I'm going to put the whole US budget on the blockchain so you can all see it. That'd be awesome. We need to see where that money, Pentagon lost $80
You
billion.
can track it. And there are people who would not want that level of transparency.
They don't want to
So
give
number
up.
one, the white paper by Satoshi Nakamoto.
Back to
And
that. So
then,
I listen
yes,
to, yeah, I listen to podcasts.
yeah.
Swan Bitcoin's a good one. Simply Bitcoin's a good one. A lot of these guys will talk, but you just got to get through the talking to get to the goal.
Mm.
Hope.com, Michael Saylor, the chairman now, he stepped back from the CEO to focus on Bitcoin. He's made the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time than anyone in history, just holding Bitcoin for a few years. Timing was everything, but if you can hold past a few years through the volatility, it goes up, and that's what it's done. As you know, in investing, past performance is no guarantee, but
Right.
look at the adoption. More countries are getting involved. More governments are getting involved. Businesses are buying. Similar Scientific bought. Their stock went up 60%. It was like 2 weeks ago. So I look at Simply Bitcoin's a good one. There's a lot of garbage out there. There's a lot of stuff that will try to shill the shit coins. At this point, I stay away from those because I don't know what's going to happen. You know,
Right.
I made money on the way up. I traded for Bitcoin, and good luck to anyone who holds any of that stuff. But I just don't want that in my mind. I'm not a trader. Hope.com, Michael Saylor. He set up.
Hmm.
That's a great. Long story short, that's a great spot to go. Hope.com.
Great. Good resources. We need to shift gears to JKD because we haven't
Okay.
talked about that yet. And we're towards the end of our podcast, but I just need to ask you, how does your study of JKD inform what you're doing with real estate and with Bitcoin and with other areas of your life? How do you tie all of these together?
Great question, man. So Bruce was a philosopher, and a lot of stuff he'd written, here's the phrase, I can see as far as I can because I've stood on the shoulders of giants.
Mm-hmm.
People, you read a book, you absorb their whole life's work in that book. And then, you understand it, you make it your own. So a lot of stuff that Bruce did, just through things that have happened in his life that he had to, again, be like water, when green he show that was called The Warrior, which is now produced by Shan, which is excellent. It was taken away from him, and they gave it to David Carradine. And
Mm.
Kung Fu. I remember being a kid, like, was he half Chinese? Did his white parents take him at
I asked the same question. Yes,
I didn't
as a
get
kid.
it.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
I love the show, but I was looking at him like, kind of, I don't know, right? But so Bruce went back to Hong Kong and made The Big Boss, and it broke records all over the world. Broke the record for Sound of Music. So the philosophy, one of the things he said, to hell with circumstances, I create opportunity. So if I didn't have Bitcoin, I'd still be chugging along with real estate, just being really conservative and looking for the right deals and the right people. But be like water, real estate, I love it, but right now I'm waiting and watching. Well, Bitcoin has taken off. That 2 million in property I sold, I bought 15 Bitcoin more at an average price of 35,000. I'm
Mm.
not up double today, but I was, I'm pretty damn close still. So it's eating
Yes.
everything. So anyway, the philosophy of Bruce, be like water. You can sit, you can, as a man thinketh. Again, he read that verse,
Hmm.
as you think, so shall you become. This is things that he absorbed and he expressed, but you look at it like, don't give up and
Sure.
learn to adapt. Charles Darwin is not the smartest nor the strongest of the species that survives. It's the one able to adapt to change. So I look at these things. You can apply anything that Bruce said to martial arts. You can apply it to life. You can apply it to business, your relationships, anything. It'll go to anything. A man can see further through a tear than he can a lens of a telescope. Oh, that's a big one.
Mm.
When people hit rock bottom, that's when they make changes in their life. This is the personal trials that you go through that makes you harder. Somebody said it. There was a girl named Claire Wineland. She repeated this from somebody else, but your biggest hurdles. This is out of Stoicism. Your biggest hurdles become your biggest strengths. She died. She had a lung transplant. She had that. I just forgot the name of the illness where your lungs fill up with fluid. She had a lung transplant years ago. Anyway, she had a stroke and died. But I watched her. This is young girl dying, and here she is thinking about life.
Hmm.
Stoicism is another thing. There's a lot of similarities between Bruce's philosophy and Stoicism, but you've got choices to make. Do the hard thing. All that stuff adds up. It's for anything across the board, your business, relationship, life, anything, your workouts, anything. You can apply it to anything.
What's remarkable, what jumps out from your answer to that question about martial arts is very much a cerebral exercise for you. Yes, it's physical and you're using it to defend yourself, but there's a lot going on in here and in your head and in your heart when it comes to discussion about Jeet Kune Do.
Bruce said, better to be a warrior. Somebody asked him, you talk about peace, but you're a fighter. How do you reconcile the two? He said, better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Yes.
Better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. You don't want to have your pants down when things go down.
Yes.
But also do the hard things. It's like I'm up at 4 a.m. I love my dogs. I get up, I'm in the garage, I have a gym set up here at my house, I work out, I get my dogs out, and then I practice it. People, like Bruce Lee said, again, people are pain phobic. They don't want to work out because it's too hard, or they're so, it
Yes.
takes too much time. Schwarzenegger, who I grew up with, was watching, growing up in the 80s. It was, you can make excuses. You can make, priority, just make time, just make
Hmm.
time to get it done. He said, you don't make excuses, you don't make it, time, you make a priority. You figure it out. And doing those hard things, if I see someone who's just jacked and I can see they're lifting weights, there's something that they've done and they can also apply to business because it takes time. Even when we're working out and you're not seeing results, but you keep going 3 feet from goal, right? You keep going and eventually it starts to happen. If somebody had that perseverance and that integrity and they got that done. So
Right.
so you nailed it.
Eric Carr, it has been a pleasure speaking with you today. Man, this has gone quickly.
I'm sorry, man. I feel like I talked the whole time.
No, no, you're supposed to. We invite our guests here to do most of the talking. My job is to probe and ask questions and listen on behalf of our
I
audience.
hope
So
I hit the points you wanted to hit, and I
yeah,
need
yes.
because
There are other areas where we could go deeper. That just means we're going to have you back. We want to explore more with Jeet Kune Do. We could always dig deeper into what's going on with Bitcoin because a lot is happening there. And of course, with real estate, so across the board. So,
pleasure.
Eric Carr, it's been a pleasure having you here today on the ROI Clear podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Raymond.
And thank you for engaging the ROI Clear podcast. At ROI Clear, we buy multifamily apartment properties, we improve them, and we give people a great place to live. At the same time, we give investors an opportunity to enjoy capital preservation, tax advantages, and a solid return on investment. If you'd like to know more, click the link to roiclear.com down below. We look forward to speaking with you.